Thank you, Chair. If we can start off with an overview on the new investment that's been announced and the vision that's been launched by the Mayor, Sir Peter. What impact do you expect that to have on cycling levels and cycle safety, both in and around outer London?
Well, I'd expect it to be considerable, and the vision document is complete in itself and looks for a further very substantial increase in both the levels of cycling and safety, and I think it's very comprehensive.
Okay, and the cycling budget for 13-14 is now at £111 million. Can you confirm that around 20 million of that is underspending from last year, which has been rolled over?
I expect so. If you've got it written down, it must be right, probably. I mean, what you've got to... So the obvious question is, one obvious question is, can you ramp up the level of spending in future years? To which the answer is quite a lot of this is actually going to be done on borough roads, and it requires considerable work with the boroughs in order to make sure that they can actually spend this money in a productive way.
So what are you doing then to engage the boroughs and making sure that there is proper work at borough level and there aren't delays?
So there was a conference last week, the week before, of all the central London boroughs about moving forward with the cycling grid, which was attended by us and the cycling commissioner. And he's been round to all of the boroughs to talk to them about what they can do and what needs to be done in order that actually the programme can be fulfilled in future years. I mean, of course, the other thing worth saying is that one of the ingredients of the 1.8 billion a year in future investment past March 2015 is that, and you know, as always, since none of our budget is. Since there is no real money past March 2015, the fulfilment in future years depends on an adequate settlement from government, just like everything else does.
And just looking at some of the borough projects, there's the plans for the three up to 3 mini Hollands in boroughs that will create a very cycle-friendly environment. Why are you limiting that to only 1 to 3 boroughs? Is it the money or the quality of the schemes that concerns you?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, we're going to run a competition to find the people who have the best plans and the ability to deliver them, which not every borough does. Quite recently, the chairman of the London Council's Transport and Environment Committee said to me that with some of the present levels of government cuts on local authorities, that they weren't going to have many or indeed any traffic engineers left in some boroughs, which would frustrate delivery of it. And there is a financial aspect to this, clearly. I mean, one of the things, you've asked Peter a lot of questions about business-like approach to investment and making sure everything's justified. If David James were here, he's asked me some very strong questions about the justification of spending so much money on cycling. To which, of course, one of the answers is it's in the Mayor's manifesto. You don't make every decision on the basis of cost benefit, and it's not wholly clear sometimes that cost benefit is the right or the only analysis that you should put. If the Mayor's general intention is to increase the levels of cycling, then actually you've got to some degree, it's an act of faith, and if you can't find comparable examples or benchmarking anywhere else, it doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do. It means that you might have to try it to show whether or not it's justified.
And I mean, say for example on the issue of these mini Holland proposals, if more boroughs did step up to the mark and did have schemes that were of a high quality, would you fund additional schemes? Would you look at finding additional resources for that?
There's no shortage of ways of spending more money. I think you've got to refer back to the original or an earlier discussion here this afternoon about the likelihood of getting long-term investment funding for the government. I think if we can get 1.8 billion a year or something like it over a number of years, hopefully 5 or even more, then we can fund those plans to the level which was described at just under £1 billion over 10 years in the cycling vision. Beyond that, there will still be further calls for spending for all sorts of things, including lip schemes in boroughs, and I'm sure that there will be people queuing up when the first 3 of these things are successful. I think that you do have to have some regard to the amount of total money that we've got and the ways in which it can be reasonably spent, and I think that if you look over the next 2, 3, 4 years, if indeed those policies are really successful, I would expect a future mayor and a future board to want us to do more of them. But you've got to start somewhere, and I mean, I think that it's really important to say that there has to be a sufficient capacity in the boroughs to deliver this. If your idea is to change the way in which people see the borough in respect to cycling, then you're not just tinkering with a few white lines. It's a fairly substantial
and
investment
and that
process.
does have implications for the size of the cycling component of the overall TfL budget relative to other. Would you expect that to, given the shift that we've got in cycling and the level of interest and so on, would you expect the component of the overall TfL budget to rise now then for cycling?
Well,
as a long-term trend.
I'd expect there to be continuous pressure on what we spend money on and how we spend it. I mean, I think that we'll be lucky if we can get the money that we've asked for in the business plan for the present time. I think it's a bit like the discussion about the overground. If you can prove, there's a lot of scepticism in national government about this size of spending of money on cycling. There's no doubt about that. And in fact, I think that extends to some parts of the business community, and it certainly extends to IPAG, who say, how can you possibly justify this? To which the answer is, the Mayor said he's going to do it, which is fine. I think one of the things that you've got to do is to spend some of this money, see how easy it is to do. You'll know that in the cycling vision there are things in there which are bold by any reasonable analysis, and after 2 or 3 years of doing them, and hopefully we can be successful because we're normally pretty good at delivering difficult things, then you can sit back and say, well, actually, if that works and it produces a step change in the level of cycling, and that's what the Mayor wants, the Mayor of the day wants, then actually either there's more pressure on the budget and you spend less on something else, or you've got a better case of government, which in part is about the increasing population of the city and the necessity of finding additional means of people moving around, and you justify more money. You know, actually, I don't know whether you read, but Greater Manchester put out a pejorative document which in part suggested that we were about to spend more money in 10 years on cycling than Manchester spends on the whole of its transport budget. Well, you know, the answer to that is partially so what, and partially, actually, that's what we've decided to do, and the benefits of it will be, you know, may well be so great that you can find more.
And just on cycling superhighways, I mean, I think similar arguments apply, but a recent TfL report talked about the remaining routes will differ significantly from the first 4, with consequent implications for the business case. Does that mean that that presumably means there'll be additional costs, and that the cycling budget will again have to rise to fund those improvements in the design of the superhighways?
The more you choose to do, the more expensive it is generally, with the exception that actually some of the proposed changes actually move. The original concept of the cycle, excuse me, we originally planned to deliver most of the first batch of cycle superhighways on our own roads, principally because it was easier to deliver them. There are now proposals to reroute some of them onto borough roads, where actually the cost of delivering them may be less because the pressure on road space is less, and it may be that you can get a better...
So we might get a higher quality scheme, but because it's on borough roads rather than
it might
TfL
cost
roads,
less. So if you look, for example, one example is that we were going to put a cycle seaway highway along Vauxhall Bridge Road. That's quite difficult to do because it's quite busy. There's a suggestion that it could be diverted up Belgrave Road and round the back, avoiding the Victoria one-way system. I think that probably can be done more cheaply because you need less physical alteration of the highway. So that's an example of something which might be better delivered and cost less. To the extent to which it now includes more comprehensive treatment of more of the junctions than we'd originally supposed we could do, either practically or because we didn't have the money, it will cost a bit more, and it will have to be shoehorned, to some degree into the budget that's available, principally because no budget is elastic. But we'll need to work through all that. You know, if you go for segregation rather than no segregation, it costs you more money because you do more segregation. And we'll just have to work through it and see what happens. I mean, I think we're optimistic that we can deliver them to a higher standard, and we'll have to see what that costs. Because the most immediate effect of that is that it delays their introduction in some cases. Because if you're going back to do further redesign, you can't install what somebody wants to change. So that's a timing change.
Okay, and before I hand back, could I just bring in Peter Anderson as well and just ask how the board assesses whether spending on cycling on particular projects represents good value for money or not?
Well, I think Mr. Peters gave you the answer, and that is the poorest wants to do it. And so
that doesn't sound hugely a huge vote of confidence and enthusiasm from the board.
No, I don't. No, what I'm saying is that the question of value for money as to whether you do it or not has not been looked at by the board. What the board is going to look at is when you actually get in to execute it, making sure that it's executed as efficiently and cheaply as possible. So there's a threshold question. You know, have we done a cost-benefit analysis or value for money on segregated cycle superhighways? The answer is no. It's a mayoral priority, and so, you know, we accept that. Then the question is, how do you execute it? And there, we would anticipate that IPAG and the committee would be doing its normal thing, saying, are we getting, you know, are we executing it in the most efficient way, you know, feasible?
Okay.
Vicky was coming on this.
It's on the case